Welcome back to the Christian I Ching. This lecture is about mapping hexagrams to archetypes, and I'm Roger Sessions. My goal in this unit is to describe the process of taking a hexagram, which is the pictographic representation for an archetype, and mapping it back to the archetype of which that is the pictographic representation. So to take a hexagram that is a bunch of open and closed lines and map it back to archetype 30, for example. So let's review a little bit of what I talked about in the last few lectures. When you ask a question of the I Ching, you're going to receive a starting hexagram and a set of moving lines. I didn't call it a starting hexagram. I said you're going to receive a hexagram, but you'll see the reason that we call it the starting hexagram soon. So you receive a starting hexagram and a set of moving lines. From the starting hexagram and the moving lines, we can construct a second hexagram, which we refer to as the resultant hexagram. Both cases, we're going to have some hexagram, and I'm going to go through this whole process, so don't try to worry about it now. But be aware of the fact that we're going to have these two hexagrams, both of which are pictographic representation for some archetype, and now we need to map from this set of open and closed lines to an index number so we can look up the archetype. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. Remember I said that a hexagram, which consists of 6 lines, either open or closed, and also remember that I said that we count the lines from the bottom, so the first line is always the bottom line in the hexagram. And I also said that you can look at the hexagram as two trigrams, a lower trigram and an upper trigram. Well, one of the times that you really need to pay attention to the lower and upper trigrams is when we're doing this mapping from a pictogram to an index number. So let me show you how that works. You're going to make use of what's called the hexagram index table. And you can see this on the first page of your workbook. You should have already printed out your workbook. And if you look at the first page, you're going to see something that looks like this. And this is the hexagram index table. You can also find it in the Christian I Ching. It's several places. Probably the easiest place to find it. It's the last printed page in the Christian I Ching, in the book, the Christian I Ching. But it's the first page, and the workbook that you've printed out is one of the activities. That's one of the PDF files that you received as part of this course. Either way, though, it's the same index table, so whichever one you're looking at is fine. Just look at one of them. Now, when you're trying to say, okay, well, I've got this pictogram, what index number is it? What you do is you break it into a lower trigram and an upper trigram. And you look at if you look at the first column of the hexagram index table, you're going to see a set of trigrams. And what you want to do is find and see where it says the lower trigram over there. So you want to find the lower trigram on which one of those 8 trigrams is the lower trigram of the hexagram that we're mapping. So you can kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm looking for a solid, open, solid line. So let's go through the lower trigrams and find a solid, open, solid. Oh yeah, there it is. It's the second from the bottom. So on the lower trigram, we found the second trigram from the bottom. And on the upper trigram, we do the same thing, but we do it on the top column. So we look across that top column until we find the upper trigram. What is the upper trigram? Well, it also turns out that it is solid, open, solid. So we go across looking for a solid, open, solid, and we see it is the second from the last, if we're going from the left, the second from the last trigram. So we found the lower trigram and the upper trigram. So we've found the row containing the lower trigram and the column containing the upper trigram. Now all you do is you look for the intersection of the row containing the lower and the column containing the upper. In this particular case, if we do that, you see that they intersect at 30. So just going across that lower trigram and down the upper trigram, those two things intersect at 30. So 30 is the index of which this is the pictographic representation for. So now we know the index number for this particular archetype. We know the pictographic representation, it's the hexagram or these two trigrams, and now we can map that to the index number that will enable us to look that archetype up very quickly. Now that was with, we can do this with any hexagram. We were doing that one with the starting hexagram, but it doesn't really matter. In most readings are going to have a starting hexagram and a resulting hexagram, so we're going to be using this index table twice. So again, if we have the resulting hexagram, which is going from the bottom is open, solid, open, solid, open, open, we break it into a lower and an upper trigram. We find the lower trigram on the left and the upper trigram on the top. The lower trigram on the left is the third from the top, and the upper trigram on the top is the second from the left. So then we just look at the intersection of that row and that column. That intersects at number 40. So this particular hexagram is a pictographic representation for archetype number 40. And now we can go look up that archetype and see what it looks like. There's a lot of ways you can find the archetype. You can either just flip through the book because they're all in numerical order, or you can look them up in the table of contents. But however you do it, you need to find which page you can read about those particular archetypes. And I already went through the different sections of the archetype. Right now I'm just trying to show you how you map from a hexagram to an archetype. So that's all there is to the mapping. The next thing we're going to start looking at is how do you actually receive these hexagrams? How do you form a question? How do you receive the answer? And how do you interpret that answer? So we'll start going through all that next. But I just want to give you some basic skills. And one of those basic skills is how to take a 6-line hexagram and map that to an index number so we can look it up, look up the archetype. That's what we've done in this lecture. And I'm Roger Sessions. And we're just getting started, so join me again soon.